Welcome to video 3 of 16 Squared, a fun tangling project by Tangulations. If you've joined me for the first two videos, you'll know where I'm at. I'm on row 3 of my little template, which you can download if you want. I'm just going through here some background tangles. These are tangles that I've grouped together that I have found often come up in my teaching, and I just thought it would be fun to share. So the next one I want to add to this little collection is one called Indirella. And the way that it's useful to use it in the background is Indirella has its own individual elements and just involves some auraline and often a little bit of sparkle to build these little creatures that start with a dot, get bigger as you're going along, as you aura a little curved line, and then get smaller again as they close up to give them their wee tail. I will often use a little bit of sparkle within them as I'm going along. I might change the direction of how they go and where their tails fit. And you're not letting each of these little individual animal elements touch each other as you slowly build them up. But just thinking of the last tile and how our tipple balls and pretomps orbs were floating away, we can do the same thing with Indirella. So where you've got an area that you want to have a bit of focus sent to, so for example this point here, what I might then choose to do is not nestle my Indirella elements beside each other, but actually have them as if they're all coming in to swarm to a particular area. So maybe my little Indirella creatures have spotted a bit of food and they're all just beginning to head towards that space. So it's a lovely way of getting a little bit of a sense of direction going on in a background and a focus to a particular area as they're coming in. Maybe the ones that are a little bit further away you can do slightly smaller if you want. So Indirella used as a background. Now there are a few tangles that also I will often just use an element of. So if you think about the step outs of a particular tangle, you have the little step outs that you do each way, but you can actually have fun with just individual elements. So there is a whole tangle called apicore, but I'm not going to do that here. The last step out of the section when you're drawing this tangle is to have these little apple seeds floating away. And actually sometimes in the background all you need is these little elements just floating in a section. So sometimes just choose a single element of a tangle to complete a background by just choosing a little element there of apicore. The other one that I often will use the element of is a tangle called blossom. And its last little element is to draw a little 3 lines that all go to the same spot and then pop a little orb on the end. Now it's treating it as if this is a little seed of the blossom flower that's just floating off the edges to go and plant itself somewhere else. But choosing just that element that floats off into the surrounding section or into the surrounding space is another way of just using an element of a tangle to fill up a section in a background. So do think about the last element of a tangle and see if there's some way you can just let that float away. Another one that I will often use if I want to actually create a direction is this lovely simple tangle called bead lines. And this is one that just involves a few lines. So if you want to join two different areas of a tile in different sections, I might often use a directional tangle like bead lines. So I will have a few lines that go from one area that I want to connect to another, and then these just involve using perfs along the lines to build up the tangle. And sometimes I will let them be very organised, as if I've threaded my beads on beautifully. Other times I'll go, oh, that sounds like a bit of a rule. I'm not into rules, I'm into guidelines. And so instead I'll just choose to thread my little perfs on exactly where I want. And if some of them are a little bit further apart from each other, then that's okay. But it's a lovely wee tangle using to connect two areas, and I will often pop it into a background. When you're doing this, just be careful that you're being deliberate still. Very important when you're doing your tangles. Be deliberate about where you are putting those tangles. And there we go, background tangles of Indirella, Apicore and Blossom, using an element of, and one to join two different directions, bead lines. Happy tangling!